This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
DRC struggles to tackle low vaccination rate amid a fourth wave of coronavirus infections. Rift between Somali president and prime minister threatens delayed parliamentary polls. And a look at Libya's peace process at gains made following the 2020 ceasefire agreement. A very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. Continuing Omicron travel chaos does threaten New Year Eve plans in the United States. We'll have the details. And Egyptians are gearing up for a cut in subsidy spending from 2022. We'll have the details and the data on that story and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we begin in Sudan, where dozens of miners have died and 8 others are missing after a rudimentary gold mine collapsed in Sudan. The disaster happened in the town of Nuhud, located 500 kilometers west of Khartoum. Artisanal gold mining is a dangerous profession in Sudan due in part to weak infrastructure. An official at the company said 4 miners were killed at the same mine in January. Police in Uganda are holding close to 30 people in connection with a new rebel group operating in 2 districts in the central part of the country. The police claim the group known as Uganda Coalition Forces for Change is responsible for the recent killings of 7 police officers over the last 4 months. CGTN's Michael Baleke reports.
Police say the Uganda Coalition Forces of Change has been targeting remote police stations to kill officers and rob their guns. The investigation suggests the armed rebel group is operating and has training camps in the central districts of Mityana and Chiboga. Joint security teams composed of the police and the military raided one of the group's hideouts, and some stolen guns and ammunition have been recovered. Police say some of the suspects, upon interrogation, revealed their intention to overthrow the government. About 30 people have so far been arrested, and investigations are underway to pursue, arrest, and recover missing weapons. 8 suspects have been arraigned in court and charged with terrorism and possession of illegal and dangerous weapons. But police say more crimes like murder and aggravated robbery will be added to the charge sheet. The attacks on police stations this month come weeks after Uganda suffered 4 suicide bomb attacks, which killed 6 people. The attacks were blamed on the ADF rebel group, which operates in the eastern DR Congo. And a military operation by the Uganda and DR Congo forces is underway to flush out the ADF rebels from the jungles of the eastern DRC. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
The World Health Organization says the number of COVID-19 cases involving Omicron is doubling every 1.5 to 3 days in countries where there is immunity transmission of the variant. Just what impact is the variant having on the African continent? CGTN's Robert Nagila has that report.
First detected on November 24th by scientists in South Africa, the Omicron of COVID-19 is spreading rapidly across Africa. Designated as a variant of concern by the World Health Organization, it spreads much faster than any other previous variant. CDC Africa says 22 African countries had reported cases of the variant by December 23rd. 6 of those countries, Burkina Faso, Togo, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco and Mauritius, reported Omicron COVID-19 cases in the past 2 weeks. In response, African countries have stepped up measures to detect and control the spread of the variant. Several countries, including Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe and Botswana, have introduced vaccine mandates as they urge more people to get vaccinated. In Kenya, A government directive that bars unvaccinated people from public spaces and in-person government services has taken effect. The positivity rate of infection on December 27th stood at 37.6%, well above the 5% positivity rate recommended by WHO for countries to ease restrictions. In Rwanda, passengers arriving into the country are required to quarantine for 3 days at a designated hotel, while a midnight to 4 a.m. curfew is in place. By December 24th, 9.3 million cases of COVID-19 had been recorded on the continent, with total deaths at over 226,000. But there is some relief, as data from South Africa suggests its Omicron peak may have passed. The World Health Organization, though, is urging caution as Europe and the United States continue to report a surge in COVID-19 cases attributed to Omicron. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Meanwhile, the DRC is facing not only a fourth wave of coronavirus infections, but also tackling a low vaccination rate. The country is the least vaccinated in the world, and a rise in infections is putting a strain on the health system. Ashta Tal has more.
The DRC is the least vaccinated country against COVID-19 in the world. Less than 300,000 people out of 90 million have received at least one vaccine dose. This comes as the country faces a fourth wave of COVID-19 cases, driven by the Omicron and Delta variants. All of this is putting a strain on the country's health system.
In a short period of time, the fourth wave is spreading really quickly, and infection rates are very high. It's true, we're at a hospital and we can see it. We're at a COVID-19 treatment center and we can see that there's lots more sick people visiting who test positive upon examination.
In an effort to combat this, a vaccinodrome has been set up in Kinshasa.
With the fourth wave that has entered the DRC, we feel, especially in companies and associations, that there are groups of people who have come to say that they can already see such cases all around them in their environments, and that they must really protect themselves, and this really has an effect on the number of vaccinations. This is because people understand that apart from being vaccinated, there is always no other way to protect themselves against the COVID-19.
And indeed, some Kinshasa residents are looking to better protect themselves against the coronavirus.
Before, we were in the dark about the consequences associated with this fourth wave of COVID-19. This is too strong, and COVID really exists, and to protect myself, I need to come and get the vaccine.
Health workers at the vaccinodrome are currently inoculating 200 people daily. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, new COVID rules kick in across parts of the UK and Europe, but not in England, as CGTN's Guy Henderson tells us.
Most of us have got used to doing this now. But beyond that, since Sunday, rules between each of the UK's 4 devolved nations now differ. For those moving freely between them, it can be hard to keep up. This lady's a visitor to Northern Ireland.
I've come over from Scotland, so everything's different. There's different types of passes. We use an NHS Inform pass over there. Over here, you have to show something when you walk in. Over there, you don't. I have no idea. I am totally lost.
For locals in each region, it is perhaps clearer.
I have a fairly good grasp, and I think that by and large, it's all pretty straightforward and sensible.
England stands apart from its Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland neighbours now. The only part of the UK not to tighten the rules, instead opting to rely on its rapid booster rollout. Despite record case numbers, hospitalisations remain way below last winter's peak. A disproportionate number of those admitted are unvaccinated. Still, up to 1 in 10 Londoners, for example, currently have COVID-19. So the public have been voluntarily cautious in recent weeks. For New Year, ministers are advising them to keep that up.
Take a lateral flow test if that makes sense, celebrate outside if you can, have some ventilation indoors if you can. Please remain cautious, and when we get into the new year, of course we will see then whether we do need to take any further measures, but nothing more until then at least.
Staying open also brings disruption though. The Premier League, for instance, postponed its 15th match of the month on Tuesday after a COVID outbreak in the Wolves camp ahead of an away trip to Arsenal. That may be why the tightening a little approach has proven more popular for many other parts of Europe as well, along with sometimes lower vaccination rates. Germany brought back limits on social gatherings from Tuesday and will play its football without spectators. Italy has already banned gatherings over the festive period and now says it'll shorten the gap between second and third doses too. Finding the best way to stay open is a constant balancing act. For the majority, a little now could save more hassle later. England remains somewhat of an outlier. Guy Henderson, CGTN.
Thousands of Germans have taken to the streets nationwide to protest against COVID-19 measures. The country has imposed restrictions on private gatherings and banned public events ahead of New Year celebrations. They mainly target those who have not been vaccinated or those who cannot get the jab due to medical reasons. The vaccinated and those who have recovered from COVID-19 also face a new range of limitations. Trent Murray has more from Berlin.
Yeah, well, these are some of the largest protests Germany has seen from anti-coronavirus restrictions protesters, heavily concentrated in the east of the country, states like Saxony as well as Brandenburg. Tens of thousands of people braving pretty cold temperatures, I have to say, overnight to come out and protest against these restrictions. There were pockets of violence as well in certain groups of the crowds. We understand that at least 10 police officers in one state have been injured and a number of arrests have been made, but this does come as the German government continues to ramp up pressure on unvaccinated people with more restrictions in order to try and curb this fifth wave of coronavirus. The real thinking goes that by adding more restrictions, it will encourage people to come and get their shots, but it certainly is a difficult path for the German government because they know that in some parts of the country there is a distrust over the vaccine, and so they are really working to not just convince people as they have been really for the past year, but in many cases also now to try and compel them with things like the Corona Pass needed to go to private businesses, as well as restrictions on things like access to non-essential retail. Currently, the latest data shows about 37% of the German population have now had their booster. The government is really pushing to get that higher. We've also seen in recent days the health minister here, Karl Lauterbach, suggesting that for people that are particularly vulnerable, they may even need to have a fourth dose at some point.
In the US, the daily COVID-19 infections have hit new highs in multiple states. The national average is nearing 200,000 new cases each day. The CDC has announced a cut in isolation for asymptomatic cases from 10 to 5 days. The move is to prepare for potential hospital shortages. William Denslow has a story from New York City.
President Biden's message to governors across the United States is that if they need something, to say something. And while hospitalization remain relatively low in the US compared to the amount of COVID-19 cases we're seeing, the president warns that hospitals are at risk of being overrun if cases continue to rise. He says that the federal government is taking steps to prepare for that. He says that one example is that they are mobilizing to 1,000 military healthcare workers to go and be deployed at hospitals that are in need of urgent staffing. Testing is also a major issue in the United States. Of course, we've seen long lines at testing facilities across the US, including right here in New York City over the holiday period. The president saying that FEMA is setting up pop-up vaccination sites in places that are in highest demand. Also, when it comes to the availability of at-home rapid tests, the president says that much progress has been made on that front, but much more work is still needed.
We went from no over-the-counter tests in January to 46 million in October, 100 million in November, and almost 200 million in December. But it's not enough. It's clearly not enough. If we'd known, we would have gone harder, quicker if we could have. Because steps we have to be taken to increase the number of authorized tests, we're now able to purchase 500 million at-home rapid tests to be sent to the American people for free when they request it.
And here in New York City, we are seeing the expansion of the vaccine mandate requirements. Now, existing rule was that public sector workers were mandated to get a COVID-19 shot. That now is being expanded to private sector workers. So as of Monday, all private sector workers need to have at least one COVID-19 dose. They have 45 days to get fully inoculized. This is meant to apply to around 184,000 businesses here in New York City. Now, on top of that, we're also seeing an expansion of the NYC, the Key to NYC initiative. Now, what this means is that all New Yorkers aged 12 and above will need to show proof that they've been fully vaccinated to enter indoor venues. That includes everything from indoor restaurants to cinemas to gyms and concert venues as well. The message from New York City's Mayor Bill de Blasio, he says that vaccine mandates work and that vaccinations are the best way to get out of this pandemic. William Denzelo, CGTN, New York.
The Chinese mainland has reported 182 new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases. The National Health Commission says 180 were detected in the northwestern province of Shanxi, mostly in the provincial capital Xi'an. Sichuan and Yunnan each reported one local case. Authorities in Xi'an have launched a new round of citywide testing and ordered residents to stay indoors to curb the spread. Zhang Yixin has more from Xi'an.
The guidance of the epidemic prevention by the government is currently released via official media on a daily basis. Simple but clarified, so the public can be aware of the latest trend. And on December 26, according to the official release of the government, to ensure the accuracy of the latest round of nucleic acid testing, the mobility of the people shall be largely minimized. And also, since the 0 o'clock on December 27th, which is yesterday, the epidemic prevention and control measures have been further reinforced. For example, people shall go out according to the purchasing policy, one person, one household for every 2 days, only if they have taken the latest round of testing with the negative result. But at the same time, the community staff is offering necessary support for the local resident. In my community, the current selection of the goods can be a little bit limited than before, but the consolidated supply is fully ensured by our community.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. To stay with us.
Africa is ending yet another pivotal year. From moments of uncertainty to moments of triumph, moments of unrest, moments of rapid change in business, climate change, security and diplomacy, and coming back from the brink. All these and much more on Events 2021.
A rift between Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo and his Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble on Monday is threatening already delayed parliamentary elections in the country. This comes even as international partners have called for dialogue to end the differences between the two leaders that could lead to another political crisis. Here is Mohamed Kahiye with more from Mogadishu.
President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo on Monday announced the suspension of the Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble, accusing him of mismanagement and failing to conduct elections. In a response, the Prime Minister denied the accusations and blamed the head of state for orchestrating a constitutional coup.
The decision by the former President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo are a clear attempted coup, a violation of the constitution and laws of the country, apart from being a violation of the laws of the land. Farmajo is using security agencies to attack the office of the Prime Minister and that of the Cabinet to try and halt their national duties.
The Prime Minister further vowed to continue his mandate to spearhead already delayed parliamentary elections before the crucial presidential elections.
I want to once again assure the Somali people that I am fully committed to spearheading a transparent election during this transitional period for a peaceful transfer of power so that we avoid the political crisis created by the former president.
The international partners in the country have called for dialogue to resolve the difference between the Somali leaders. Political analyst Ismail Omar says the leaders should focus on issues that unite people rather than engaging in divisive politics.
The first priority should be given to the lives of the people when it comes to issues to do with security and unity. Elections should not be used as an exercise that disunites people based on their region's affiliations, and therefore there is need for compromise to move forward with the elections and congratulate both the winners and the losers.
Somalia is not new to rift between the president and the prime minister. There has been public rift before several times between these two entities that risk armed confrontations. The difference is largely based on the draft constitution, which does not clearly define the separation of powers between these two powerful entities. Mohamed Kahir, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Even though Libya failed to hold its presidential election on time as scheduled in December, the year 2021 has been a largely great one for the North African nation. It saw Libya's longest ceasefire since 2014 remain in place. The year also witnessed connectivity between the eastern and western regions reopened, allowing citizens to freely travel across the country, something they had not done for many years. Here's CGTN's Adel Makhroui as he revisits how Libya fared in the year 2021.
After Libya's military foes signed a ceasefire agreement in October 2020, 2021 began with military calm that lasted for the entire year. Rival Libyan sides agreed to resume domestic flights and reopen the coastal road, giving citizens the freedom to travel between eastern and western cities. Years of institutional divisions ended after the UN-sponsored Libyan Political Dialogue Forum elected an executive authority that reunited government bodies.
2021 is one of the best years for Libya since the 17th of February revolution. We've been through relative calm. The country has become more stable to citizens because there were no more wars.
Although it is not performing as aspired, the government of national unity is the biggest achievement this year. Compared to previous governments and the existing division, this government can operate freely in most Libyan territories. Uniting the central bank and the Ministry of Interior are great steps, but Libya still needs to work on uniting the military.
Military institutions remain divided between the eastern-based Libyan National Army and the western-based government military forces and militias. World powers and international organizations gathered to support Libya in the Berlin II conference in June, at Algeria's Libya Neighbors meeting in September and the Paris conference in November. They called for the withdrawal of all foreign fighters in Libya, but very limited progress was made.
Today, foes sit together on the negotiating table. Polarization is diffusing and accusations against one another are decreasing. The military ceasefire makes the overall situation in Libya much better. The benefits of the cessation of hostilities outweigh the downsides of the presence of foreign fighters who still need to leave.
As Libya marched towards the December 24 elections, political conflicts heightened. Disputes over the state budget and government spending led the eastern-based parliament to pass a no-confidence vote against the interim government of Abdulhamid Dbeibeh. The presidential race ignited the political scene further after former Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, applied to vie in the election. Dbeibeh too decided to run despite an earlier promise that he would not do so. Appeals against several presidential candidates were filed in Libyan courts. The Elections Committee missed the deadline to announce the final list of candidates, forcing the presidential poll to be postponed to 2022.
I was expecting the election to be delayed. Many parties were working on the postponement, in addition to the legal disputes between Parliament and the High Council of State. I hope next year will be better. I hope that Libya will be stable secure, and it will be a country that has a decent constitution, an elected executive authority, and an independent judiciary. These are my wishes for 2022.
We've been waiting for these elections for many years. It would have been the first of its kind in Libya's history. We were very excited about the step, especially that it was scheduled for December 24th, Libya's Independence Day. We would have been celebrating two dear events.
Libyans begin a new year hoping for change. They wish to see a permanent end to their decade-long conflict. Yet 2022 begins without a clear political roadmap. Military forces are still divided, and at least 20,000 foreign fighters should be evacuated. Meanwhile, politicians are not agreeing on the future of the interim government, the Constitutional Foundation, and the order of the vote. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And turning to Senegal, the country has unveiled the first new railway to be built since it gained independence from France. The regional express will begin providing transport from the industrial city of Diamniadio to the capital, Dakar.
The new $1.3 billion commuter railway looks to ease traffic heading to and in Senegal's capital, Dakar. Currently, the regional express service connects Dakar to the industrial city of Diamniadio.
Today, here in Diamniadio, the emerging Senegal has taken a new step in its upward trajectory. Our march towards our emergence continues because tomorrow, the regional express will arrive at Blaise Diagne Airport, and then step by step, we will go to Thiès, to Mbour, and even further.
The railway is part of President Macky Sall's Senegal Emergent Plan, which looks to speed up the country's development.
All Dakar residents are victims of traffic jams. You lose a lot of time, you lose energy, sometimes you lose markets, you lose even in the operation of the public and private sector. It is a huge difficulty, and without the railway, you cannot go far.
The railway is expected to carry around 115,000 passengers daily. The 45-minute ride from Diamniadio will cost $3 US. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, let's now go to Ramanya for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business news. We're still seeing continued Omicron-inspired travel chaos threatening New Year Eve plans in the United States. And Egyptians are gearing up for a reduced subsidy spending bill in 2022.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Marawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
Is the front line now after 9 days of fighting?
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
the front line. Within clear view of this front line position.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Let's start away from the continent, specifically in the United States. A surge in new COVID cases has caused airlines over there to cancel over 1,000 flights in the US alone on Monday. That was the 4th straight day of flight cancellations that has left thousands of travelers stranded. Now, the 7-day moving average of new COVID cases in the US stood at over 206,000 on the 26th of December. Officials are now warning people to scale down or cancel the travel plans for New Year's Eve. Edith Tianxian reports.
It's the Christmas surprise no one wanted or expected. Tens of thousands of passengers have been stranded at airports across the United States and abroad after hundreds of flights were cancelled in recent days amid an uptick during the holiday weekend.
One of my best friends is stuck in Mexico right now, and her family just tested positive, and they got kicked out of their hotel room, and it's just a whole disaster.
At Los Angeles International Airport alone, nearly 120 flights were cancelled, disrupting travel plans for as many as 200,000 passengers. According to a flight tracking website, FlightAware.com, more than 1,200 flights in the U.S. and some 6,000 globally have been cancelled.
I actually came here for my dad's funeral. I'll go ahead and share that. And we feel like he's been watching over us the whole time. So we feel really blessed, and we feel like this plane's going to take off, and he's up there helping us out.
While some cancellations were due to bad weather, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, others were largely due to staffing shortages, as many airline workers called in sick following a number of coronavirus outbreaks.
The sheer volume of cases that we're seeing now, yesterday we had 214,000 cases. Even with a diminution in severity, we still could have a surge on hospitals, particularly among the unvaccinated, which we're really worried about.
Officials are urging people to scale down or cancel their New Year's Eve plans at a time when airlines are struggling to meet travel demands with healthy staff. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
On to Egypt. The country's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has issued a decree effectively stopping the issuance of food ration cards for new families. Now, these ration cards entitle their holders to receive 35 free or subsidized food items from the government every month. For decades, these food subsidies are meant to help support the poor, but officials say this entire system really isn't working as planned. From July 2022 through to June 2025, Egypt will be spending an average of $6 billion a year just on food subsidies. Here's Yasser Kim with a story.
For over 80 years, poor married couples have been receiving food ration cards. They would automatically add their children on the food ration cards, and with time, their grandchildren as well, and so forth. Nearly 2/3 of the 102 million population now benefit from it every month, whether they are poor or well off. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has decided to cut this cycle and prevent issuing new ration cards for family members.
We have to change the culture of population growth. If you want 1, 2 or 6 children without being able to provide for them and to give them good education and more, you have to take a step back. No one who is getting married from now on will receive food ration cards. If you're getting married and yet you're waiting for the country to give you a ration card, it means you're getting married and yet you can't even spend on yourself. This is not right. This has been deep-rooted in our culture. It is only in our country that you will buy things cheaper than its real value, you get services at less cost, and when you have children, the state feeds them. We cannot afford it anymore.
Officials believe that cutting food subsidies for children would automatically reduce the country's high birth rates, a big problem for the developing nation. Though this move could anger millions who have been benefiting from ration cards for decades, experts say it's correcting what's wrong.
Poverty rates in Egypt are about 29.7%, down from 32% in 2017. That is about 32 million citizens. The ones who receive subsidized food are over 64 million. So there is a big gap between 64 million who use ration cards and 32 million who are eligible for the ration cards. The decision by the president is to reduce the gap.
According to official statistics, in 2020 the government had spent $10.5 billion on food subsidies, a big portion of the state budget's $80 billion. The new decision will save nearly half this amount, thus freeing funds for other social security programs.
There is the Dignified Life program to develop the rural villages in Egypt from the year 2020 to 2023 and will benefit 58 million people at a cost of $44 billion. This is just one example. There is also the monthly financial income scheme on the Takaful and Karama social program, which costs $1.2 billion and benefits about 3.27 million families. That's about 14 million Egyptians.
The process to only allow ration cards to those who really need it begins in 2022. It is part of a comprehensive restructuring of the social safety net at the North African country to help eradicate poverty and improve living conditions for the low-income earners. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Tanzania's president has launched a near $10 million fiber optic cable manufacturing plant. Its products are expected to help speed up the construction of the country's national fiber optic cable network. Here's CGTN's Isaac Lucando with the details.
Africa's fourth largest optic fiber cable manufacturing plant has been launched in Tanzania. Able to produce 24,000 kilometers of optic fiber cables every year, all the country's immediate internet infrastructure needs are expected to be met. The government says the plant will serve East and Central Africa, helping the country achieve its goal of becoming an ICT hub.
The government continues to create a conducive environment for ICT and public information systems by improving telecommunication, radio and television infrastructure, the construction of communication towers, and the construction and development of the national ICT backbone.
With 29 million internet users in the country, fast and reliable broadband internet is in high demand. Analysts say the high internet speeds achievable through optic fiber cables are revolutionizing all spheres of Tanzanian society.
The doctor can do surgery while not present physically at the hospital. We had the speed was having a problem. Someone can speak something, then you have to wait, but now we need a speed, we need real-time issues. You see, this is how things have been simplified by this technology.
To ensure greater internet capacity and speed, the government has been constructing a national fiber optic cable network with over 8,000 kilometers of cable already laid down. The government's target is to get this number to 15,000 kilometers by 2025.
The Tanzanian government's plan is to see internet access reach 80% by 2025, up from the current 50%. With the plant now manufacturing optic fiber cables in the country, this target could be achieved sooner.
At 75% completion, the government is pouring in more money to see the National ICT Backbone project completed. Analysts caution that educating the public on the importance of protecting ICT infrastructure must go hand in hand with the execution of the project.
This is a technology that uses a glass. If you cut it, there's nothing inside it. So education to these people is very important, because a lot of cards trying to do some theft, thinking something worthy, and most of the time this is really affecting availability of uptime of this broadband.
The government hopes that the presence of an optic fiber cable plant will offer greater internet connectivity to East and Central African countries. At home, it hopes that a prosperous digital economy will now be within reach. Isaac Lucando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
And finally, frictions to continue between Western Europe and Russia over natural gas supplies. Western Europe is experiencing a winter of relatively high gas prices, and authorities there are accusing Moscow of curbing gas supplies for political reasons. Russia, however, denies those accusations.
The Arctic cold has come early this winter to the streets of Moscow. But apartments here are unaffected by the frigid temperatures.
It is minus 21 outside, but we had to switch off the radiator, and sometimes we need to open the window as it's very, very hot.
Russia doesn't have energy supply issues, as it's one of the world's largest producers and exporters of natural gas. In the face of a colder winter than normal, Western Europe is accusing Russia of using its gas exports for political gains. Russian observers dismiss the claim and say that Gazprom, one of Russia's largest producers and exporters of natural gas, is just doing business and trying to reach long-term contracts with European buyers.
Selling gas to the European market without those contracts is just not interesting for Gazprom, and that's the essence of the conflict between the Russian and European side.
Observers say Europe has not built up a sufficient supply of gas to guarantee there will be enough fuel to heat homes and businesses this winter. If an agreement isn't reached, Europe would have to start purchasing Russian gas on the open market, paying astronomical fees. Gas prices soared earlier this month after German officials said the completed Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Germany could not be certified. It is unlikely it will be open anytime soon, and that is contributing to market instability.
Natural gas is a transitional fuel to counter climate change and dirty coal-generated energy. Opposing projects like Nord Stream 2 pipeline is nonsense.
As temperatures go down across Europe, it seems that politics is at the core of whether European apartments will be warm this winter.
80% of all Russian energy exports are destined for the West. And regardless of the West's rapid turn to clean energy, such alternatives still cannot fully replace Russian fuel. The only solution for both sides out of this crisis is negotiation. But that seems to be increasingly unlikely recently. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Moscow.
I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be heading over to South Africa. A high court over there has effectively stopped, at least for a short period of time, Shell's seismic survey along the country's eastern coastline. We'll have the details on that story and plenty more at the top of the hour. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. A widely anticipated travel documentary starring Tanzania's President Hassan to premiere in April. We'll tell you all about it.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A widely anticipated travel documentary starring Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan is set to premiere in April of next year. The documentary shows the head of state, who is the protagonist in her safari attire, taking the audience on an adventurous tour of some of Tanzania's most iconic landscapes. CGTN's Isaac Lucando has more.
It's not often that politicians get to star in films. This coming April, President Samia Suluhu Hassan will come to screens around the world in a travel documentary dubbed The Royal Tour. She is using her time in the spotlight to showcase Tanzania's various tourism, investment, arts and cultural attractions.
The goal is to show the world that Tanzanite gemstones come from Tanzania. We are showing them evidence of where the mines are, the way they are mined, and how we add value until it reaches the end user.
The documentary is part of a series produced by Emmy Award-winning American journalist Peter Greenberg. While the major focus of the series is on tourism, President Hassan is also using the platform to boost foreign investments.
We want to showcase our good governance and our stable political climate in order for investors to come and invest so that we win and they win.
Tanzania is not the only country to get featured in the series. In the past, the show has featured a number of world leaders and their countries, including Rwanda's President Paul Kagame. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, Tanzania would receive some 1.5 million tourists from around the world every year, earning the country around $2.5 billion. President Hassan is hoping that some screen time will help boost these numbers. Most members of the public are particularly excited about the documentary's potential impact on the country's tourism.
As a nation, we are getting a tool to transmit to the world what makes us a nation, and to also transmit to a large extent what treasures we hold as a country.
Because when they come, they visit different hotels, they buy different things from different vendors. So it's a positive, it will bring positive impact in our development. So it's a good thing.
Critics argue that the documentary alone may not be enough to change the fortunes of the country. However, President Hassan remains optimistic that her time in the spotlight will ultimately benefit ordinary Tanzanians. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Above the reach.
And coming up in your sports news. Lewandowski, Mbappe and Ronaldo scooped up honors at the Globe Soccer Awards held in Dubai.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A doping scandal saw the International Weightlifting Federation ban Egypt from all competitions. All appeals failed, which saw the country's national team barred from the Tokyo 2020 Olympics in Japan. However, 2021 will close on high after Egypt's ban was officially